Welcome. Thank you all for coming. We at OCAEP are excited to be hosting our first annual Urban Planning Career Panel. My name is Renata Langus. I'm the Vice President of the OCAEP Student Chapter here at UCI, and I will be hosting the event this evening. First, I want to start off by acknowledging our event sponsor and host. Thank you to the UCI MERP program, Masters in Urban and Regional Planning program, for generously sponsoring the event. And thank you to OCAEP, our nonprofit sponsor. The OC Association of Environmental Professionals, or AEP, is the California regional-based nonprofit organization of interdisciplinary environmental professionals, and its mission is to improve the technical skills of its members, especially with regard to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So the purpose of our event tonight is to help build connections between urban planning students and working professionals. Our hope is that by the end of the program, attendees will come away with a better understanding of the different career paths available to graduates of urban planning programs and better insight into the day-to-day work of planning professionals, along with some advice to help emerging professionals as they navigate their career journey. Here's the event schedule for this evening. We'll have the panel introduce themselves, about 2 minutes per panelist, and then we'll have a quick icebreaker to understand who's in the audience, including 3 polls. After that, we'll have a raffle and a 5-minute stretch break, and then we'll dive into the breakout rooms, which will occupy the majority of the schedule for this evening. The breakout rooms will be informal small group discussions, which are opportunities to exchange and share ideas. Each panelist will lead a discussion with a very broadly defined topic as anything relating to the career journey or urban planning. And we want to encourage big picture thinking, storytelling, and exchanges. As a reminder, please keep your microphone on throughout the duration of the event. Please keep your video camera on throughout the duration of the event, and please turn off your microphone when you're not speaking in order to minimize disruptions. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to the panelists to introduce themselves briefly. And I'd like to just go in alphabetical order, if that's okay. Great, so I'll start with Adrienne. Can you give a quick introduction?
Sure, thank you, Renata. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Adrienne Antoine, and I'm actually new in terms of just doing a career transition into USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, where I'm in the Bureau for Development, Democracy, and Innovation in a Center for Environment, Energy, and Infrastructure. I work on a team called Climate and Cross-Sectoral Strategies. The focus of this effort is to really focus on how we can start to integrate climate variability and change into the programming that USAID is focused on. You guys are urban planners, so we'll definitely try to keep a focus on the urban aspect, and that's one of the topics that I'm focusing on. And prior to that, I came from NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, prior to December, where I was for 15 years working in the Climate Program Office in the Climate and Societal Interactions Program. And that really was focusing on the nexus between climate and society. My portfolio focused on the coastal zone. So how do you work with coastal communities, many of which are urban, on the impacts of climate variability and change, as well as looking at the nexus between sort of the coastal urban land interface and nature-based solutions and ecosystem services. So I'm happy to be here tonight in a personal capacity to share my career thoughts and be helpful as much as I can and talk a little bit about the work that I do. And thanks to the team for inviting me to participate tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next is Alexandra.
I like how you say my name.
I'm sorry.
No,
how do you say it?
It's just Alexandra. My mom made it up.
I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. I like that way too. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra Captan. I work at Placeworks as an associate designer, but my time is split between being a planner and designer. I basically do anything and everything that is with the private sector when it comes to planning and design that you would think of. So it's outreach, designing neighborhoods, doing plan checks when cities don't have enough people or they have too much bandwidth going on, creating specific plans, doing EIR reports, name it, it's under our umbrella. Placeworks is a consultant firm. So we have architects, we have land planners, we have landscape architects, we have scientists, we have all types of people in our office. Renetta is actually one of our interns. But before that, I studied at UCI. I graduated in 2015 in urban studies. I have a master's in construction management engineering from Arizona State. Before Placeworks, I actually started working here last year in October. Before COVID, I was working at Disneyland, hotels, parks and resorts, and working with facilities management. And then before then, I was working as an urban planner and designer, again, for about 4 years. Before that, I was a military facilities planner. And then besides that, I've done internships for local entities like City of Tustin, City of Newport Beach, Caltrans. I've studied abroad, or I did an internship abroad in West Africa, Liberia, working with public works. I have quite a wild range of experience, but yeah, I touch a lot of areas of planning. So bring all your questions my way.
Great, thank you. Next is Christina Martinez.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Christina Martinez. I am a senior transportation planner at IBI Group. So we're a consulting firm, similar to Placeworks. We actually have worked with Placeworks before. But we are mostly planners, engineers, and architects, international. So we have 60 something offices around the world. I work in our Irvine office. I started off in our LA office, but I work in Irvine, where we have most of our transportation group. So I do a lot of active transportation, multimodal connectivity, transit planning, first and last mile planning, community engagement, a lot of GIS as well. So aside from planning, I'm also the regional GIS lead for the US offices within our spatial intelligence group within the firm. And within my planning projects, a lot of our clients typically are transit agencies or MPOs, also cities. So we work a lot with LA Metro, OCTA, SCAG, SANDAG, and we work in a lot of cities across the US, mostly in California. So most of my projects are in Southern California. I've worked a little bit abroad as well. But I've kind of always known I wanted to work in Southern California, so that's kind of what I do at IBI. As far as my background, I'm an LA native. I went and got my bachelor's in environmental science and policy at Chapman University. And then for a little while after that, I worked at a water research agency. And then I really got into planning. I can go into more detail about that later. But I ended up going to UCI for the master's in planning. And I graduated in 2016. And while I was at UCI, I interned at a few different places. So I got some experience in public, private, and nonprofit. So I did intern at Metrolink. I worked with Santa Ana Active Streets for a while as well. And then with IBI, which is the internship that turned into the job that I'm still at today. So that's me.
Great, thank you for that intro. Next, we have Jacqueline Martinez. Jacqueline?
Jacqueline Martinez, or
I'm sorry.
me?
I'm sorry, Jacqueline Ramirez?
Yeah, okay. Hi. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Jacqueline Ramirez. I'm a policy associate for Housing California, which is an organization focused on advancing the interest of homeless and housing. So we kind of convene and align with local and state groups to work around these issues. And so we work on state policy that impacts the general fund allocation, affordable housing, homelessness, and land use policies. I went to UCLA for my undergrad and USC for graduate school. While I was in school, I was interning at Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, where I was working on the homeless count, and the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles. And then I also worked in the school's economic development department. So that's it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Julia Kim?
Hi, everyone. First, huge thanks to Renata and the whole team for inviting me to join you all. And I'm so impressed by how accomplished the other panelists are. I gotta say, everyone who's participating, you're very lucky. I'm sure I can probably learn a thing or two from the experience that folks have had on this panel. I'm Julia Kim. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based out of Oakland, which is located on the unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone people. I'll also note that my connection is a little shaky. You might see my video freeze, but hopefully you can still hear me through audio clearly. I've been with the Local Government Commission, or LGC for short, for over 6 years now. LGC is a statewide nonprofit. We work with communities throughout California, as well as some communities outside of California throughout the US. And we focus on helping local leaders create more livable communities. We focus in on 4 main program areas: climate change and energy, water, community design, and national service. In my role as the Climate Change and Energy Program Director, I essentially oversee our portfolio of climate and energy focused coalitions, capacity building programs, place-based initiatives, and research projects. We do serve as somewhat of an intermediary organization. We do, some of our teams do engage in specific planning work. Our team does provide some support on planning work, but a lot of our bread and butter for our team is really on the policy engagement side, providing trainings and helping local jurisdictions build capacity. And as I noted, helping to form and then facilitate coalitions that include local jurisdictions, but also regional and state government, other nonprofit community organizations, tribes, academic institutions, really the full spectrum. I also serve on the board of the American Society of Adaptation Professionals, as well as the Sierra Nevada Alliance. And in terms of my educational background, I got my undergrad in political science and my master's in environmental policy, both from the University of Maryland, College Park. So I'm excited to dive into the discussions in just a bit.
Thank you, Julia. And thank you to all of the panelists who are here tonight. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing about your experience. So now we can switch into the quick polls. That will be a short way to give an icebreaker to the group. So I will launch the polls, starting off with the first question. Which of the following best describes you? What is your field of study? Just wait a few more seconds for people to finish entering their response.
Also, hey everyone, my name is Ricardo La. I'm treasurer of OCAEP. I'm kind of keeping track of people jumping in for the raffle. I noticed that there's 33 participants, but I only have 32 numbers. So if you just jumped on and you don't have a number, please let me know. The last I left off on was Maggie 31, Farsi 32. Anyone after that, just let me know, because there's 33 participants, but I only have 32 numbers. I just want to make sure everyone's has a.
Yeah, that's for the raffle. Thank you, Ricardo. Okay, so I'll end the poll and share the results. Quite a few undergraduate students and a lot of MERP students and a few others. Awesome. It's great to have such a diverse group. Okay, so for the next one. Here's the next question. Primary interests in planning. Just give people a few more seconds to finish submitting their response. All right, so I'll end the poll now and share the results. So it looks like climate planning and justice wins, followed by sustainable urban design, sustainable transportation, and affordable housing. Awesome. Okay, so for the last and final poll, geography. So what region of California, or are you from outside of California? Give people a few more seconds to fill out their responses. And I will share the poll results. So mostly in the SCAG region, few in the San Diego and APAC region, and other regions in California. Great. Thank you all for putting your responses into the poll. So now we will do a quick group photo. Christian, are you ready? So we will need everyone to please turn on their cameras for this.
Yes, and there's a lot of people in this group, in this Zoom, so bear with me for a few seconds. So smile. Okay, we're good.
Thank you. That was pretty fast. Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. And during that break, if you haven't already, please take a look at the spreadsheet that's in the chat, and I will send it again in case you haven't had a chance to rank your top questions. This is for the Q&A, but feel free to, just take a breather, walk around, take a stretch, or get a drink of water. So we'll have 5 minutes to do a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. We'll just wait a few more seconds for people to trickle in. Please remember to turn on your cameras when you're back. And coming up next, we'll do our first raffle of the evening. And we have a variety of different e-gift cards for people to choose from.
All right, let's do this. So I guess just to there'll be four drawings, two now and then two at the end of the workshop. And as Renata mentioned, the options are either just a $50 I guess gift card, or if you have a specific you know, special place that you like shopping at, we can do that too. And I'll follow up with emails once we have our winners. All right, let me see if I can share my screen now. Can y'all see that? Oh, no, hold on. All right, what about now?
Yes.
All right, cool. So again, you all should have an assigned number that was posted in the chat. Here we go. All right, congratulations, number 2, Carlene. Wow.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
It's rigged. No, I'm just kidding.
Totally rigged.
Congratulations,
Totally
Carlene.
Not
I'll
rigged.
follow
It's
up with
not
you.
rigged. Randomized.
It's 100% rigged,
All right.
Carlene.
Now we're gonna hide choice to make sure Carlene doesn't win again. Or is it, no, hide choice. Okay, here we go. Let's do it one more time. $14. Congratulations, 14. On my list, I have Gabby.
Woo, Gabby!
All
Yay.
right,
I'll follow up with
Rigged.
both
It's
of y'all.
Carlene's friend.
We don't know Gabby.
That's what I
We don't
said.
know each other.
All right. So we'll have 2 more at the end of the workshop. So congratulations, Gabby and Carlene.
Awesome, great. So now we will start the breakout rooms next. These will be just about 8 minutes long, 8 to 9 people per group, and the panelists will be leading an informal discussion. Panelists, feel free to be creative in your process. Feel free to share stories about your own professional journey and stimulate discussion, or share some slides. Everyone has the ability to share their screen. So without further ado, I will launch the breakout rooms.
Renata, are you reassigning all the people that aren't in breakout rooms?
No.
There's something in the chat. Suki says that check group me.
It says breakout rooms will close. Did you press close?
Yeah, I accidentally pressed the button by mistake. So we'll just have to regroup.
Volume up and try to hear you well enough.
Hi, I am so sorry. I accidentally closed the breakout rooms. Let me try that one more time. My apologies. Okay, here we go. I'll set the timer. Thank you.
Renata, you're not going into the breakout room?
Yeah, I'm gonna join a room. Just wanted to make sure everything was working before.
All of these, I just went ahead and assigned people to the room.
Okay,
Um,
great.
the following people just aren't accepting it, so.
Yeah, I know. And I emailed those people in advance to let them know that it has to do with the Zoom. So if they don't have a Zoom account, the pre-assigned breakout rooms just don't work. So I told them that if they would like to attend, they can listen to the recording afterwards because we're going to share the recording. So.
Okay, then you can go ahead and have fun.
Yeah, I don't know where to drop in. I just wanted to make sure everything works before I join.
Yeah. I just
So.
randomly assigned people all that.
Okay, I'll join
in a
room 1
breakout
because
room.
that one is the smallest, I think.
Yeah. Okay, good luck.
Thanks.
Great. And is MERC the master's program? Sorry, I'm just not familiar.
Oh, yeah. It's the Masters
Awesome.
of Urban and Regional Planning.
Okay, Lily?
Hello, I'm Lilia, and I'm a UCI undergraduate freshman majoring in public health sciences, and I'm a first year at UCI. I just graduated from high school last year, so yeah.
Great. Christian?
Hi, I'm Christian. I'm marketing director for AEP, and I am a planning intern with the city of Paramount. I am also a second-year MERP student at the UCI, and I expect to graduate this year. So I'm pretty excited for that. Right now, I'm kind of in the position of applying for full-time jobs. I'm trying to see what's out there and kind of get more, get my foot into the door, basically.
Great. And Renata, are you joining in official capacity, or is this your opportunity to participate?
I'm going to try to jump into any breakout rooms that I have time for, but on the side, I'm hosting the event. So I just wanted to quickly jump in and hear what you all are talking about. My name is Renata, second year MERP student, along with Kristen and Alora. And I am interested in sustainable transportation and climate planning. I'm currently an intern at PlaceWorks, and just really excited to be here and hear from all of you and learn from one another.
Great. We have one more person. Patricia, hi, and Eric. I just wanted to know really quickly, like, people's where they are in school and their interest area. So maybe Patricia and then Erica, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, very quickly. I actually joined because my niece is part of the panel and I wanted to hear her work. And I'm actually in Tokyo right now. I'm a school leader. I'm a head of school. And I just wanted to keep up with what's going on with sustainable planning. And that's my interest because I'm in education. So I may go on and off because I'm home, and but I'm here to listen.
Awesome. Erica?
Hi, sorry, I popped in late. So I'm interested in housing policy and urban design. I'm currently a second year MERP student at UCI, so I'll be I'm set to graduate in a few months. And what else am I interested in? I'm also interested in learning a little bit more about sustainability.
Great. Okay. So I didn't want to prepare any slides because that is like distracting, and then I'm not looking at you guys and we're having a conversation. So I'm just going to pop 2 links into the chat. And one is kind of starting like the job I was doing before I left recently. And as I mentioned, I worked at NOAA. And a lot of the work that we were really focusing on, I think, kind of hits on some of the work that everybody is interested in. So we were really trying to understand, how do you better take climate information and make it useful for decision making, and where that decision making happens and who's making those decisions matter. So we were working for New York City's, like this case study that I just posted. The program I worked on is called COCA, Coastal and Ocean Climate Application. So this is some research that we funded. Basically the COCA program supported research research grants that were interdisciplinary between scientists and decision makers. So this work was looking at trying to understand who's vulnerable, and used Hurricane Sandy as a case study. So trying to understand vulnerability of different communities and how that information can be used for resilience issues. We've also worked in smaller communities. I know you guys are all urban planners and really interested in the urban space, but we've also looked at sort of like smaller Barrier Island communities in North Carolina. Charleston is also an urban area where we've done a lot of work trying to understand not just future sea level rise, but really try to also understand things like nuisance flooding that is due down in the Charleston region. Thinking about where you guys are in California, we funded some work in the Bay Area over the past couple of years, looking at trying to understand sort of the differences in coastal land motion and changes and how that might affect coastal communities. So that's a lot of the work that I was doing at NOAA, where it was really trying to take climate information that was more social science based, whether it was economics, whether it was anthropology, whether it was sociology, trying to understand those human vulnerabilities and how we can actually develop an informed climate adaptation plans to support these communities as they make decisions in the future. As you know, recently I moved over to USAID. That portfolio is still developing, but the idea is relatively similar in that where we look at the portfolio work that USAID is doing. Lily, you said you're interested in health, so trying to look at our health programming across the world and how we can start to bring sort of a climate lens to that work. Malaria, trying to understand malaria better, where we might see malaria in the future, where we're not seeing malaria now due to changes in weather patterns, where are we going to see more severe cases of malaria, and how we might be able to better plan for such impacts in the future. And so I also wanted to just provide a quick link, give me 1 second, to what's called Urban Resilience. And that's the Urban Links part of USAID, and provides, hold on, I just had it and I lost it already. And just provide some information and some examples of some of the more urban related work that we're doing. So I'm gonna stop there. And I really wanna use the time, since we only have about 5 minutes left, to just open it up for questions. And I don't know if there's I'm not super familiar with Zoom, but if there's like a raise the hand function, or if people just wanna jump in, I really want to focus on whether it's more in specifics about the work that I do, or whether it's about like career and career advice. As you know, I just made a major career change, moving from NOAA to USAID. I'm happy to answer those type of questions. So I'm happy to kind of open it up for questions right away. Wait, this breakout room is ending already. Has it really been 8 minutes?
Yeah, it goes by fast, but don't worry because we'll have 10 minutes of time for the Q&A.
Okay. Is there one question that maybe I could answer real quick? Go ahead, Erica.
I just wanted to know, like, how did you, I mean, I didn't hear the conversation and how you switched over, but how did you navigate, starting a job from one place to the next without like being pigeonholed in one area, I guess, if that applies to you?
No, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure I was super pigeonholed, except for the fact that most of my career has been domestic focused. But knowing that I wanted to work internationally, one of the things that I started doing a couple of years ago is just really working hard to find opportunities at NOAA to do some international work. So in the past,
Man, that feels like a marathon. Oh, you're muted.
That is really fast. Do people feel like they want to extend it maybe to 10 minutes instead, or? Yeah, that's totally fine. And I understand because it's a larger group than we expected. So I'll change it to 10 minutes. And we'll do another round. So let me just create the new breakout rooms. Gonna wait until they close. They're gonna close in a few seconds. So thanks for your patience.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, if you run out of time, we can send contact info and through a follow-up email as well, so you can connect through LinkedIn with everyone.
So for those of those that are just joining us, we are doing raffles and we assigned numbers at the beginning of the workshop. But if you're just joining us and you don't have an assigned number, feel free to just, and you want to be part of it. I mean, who doesn't want to be part of a raffle, right? But if you want to participate and you don't have a number yet, just go ahead and drop your name in the chat, and then I can easily assign you a number.
All right. Thank you, Ricardo. We're ready to switch to the breakout rooms again. So this time it'll be 10 minutes.
Eddie, I'm going to assign you to a room because I think your registration isn't going through.
Oh, we had to register?
Yes, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to put you in room 3, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
The questions. I'll tap the first person, and then if you can tap the next person so we keep things rolling, that would be amazing. So Christian, I'll pass it to you first.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Christian. I am a second-year MERP. I am graduating this spring. I'm the marketing director for UCI AEP, and I'm a planning intern at the city of Paramount. So right now, I'm kind of in the position of looking for full-time positions, and then just kind of getting my foot into the door with planning. So I'm really interested in how you got into planning and how you kind of develop your career as you move forward. And I'll tap Erica.
Hello. So yeah, my name is Erica. I am also a second year MERP, and Christian and I are actually co-workers at the city of Paramount. I'm interested in looking at housing policy, urban design, and I'm really interested in hearing about your experiences in the nonprofit sector because I'm also interested in working in that sector for a little bit just to get a feel for it. So yeah, I'll pass it to Allura.
Hi, I'm Allura Aguilera, and I am an architect and planner, second year MERP, and definitely interested in urban design, sustainability. I'd love to hear what you have to say about climate change and energy. Definitely interested in alternative energy. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. And I will pass it to Renata.
Hi, I'm Renata. I am a second year MERP student. I'm interested in active transportation planning and climate planning. I'm going to be starting a full-time job soon with PlaceWorks, and they do a bit of climate planning, so I hope to learn more about that. Thank you all for coming.
And then Patricia, why don't we pass it to you? Yeah.
So I'm in Tokyo, Japan, and I joined because my niece is on the panel and I wanted to hear more about what's going on with sustainability and racial justice in urban planning. And I guess it goes to, is it Lilia?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Lilia, and I'm a UCI undergraduate freshman, and I'm majoring in public health sciences. And I'm just interested in immersing myself in many different interdisciplinary fields to get a feel of what I'm interested in. And I'm open-minded for anything that comes along. So yeah.
Amazing. What a great group with such diverse interests, but also so very connected. I hope y'all are getting connected to one another as well. I think these will be really fruitful and important relationships to continue fostering as you launch your careers and really get moving. Oh my goodness, so many things that y'all brought up. Let me see if I can try to respond to some of these things. So I think the nonprofit sector, so I'll focus on that first, just given my experience in that space. it's the sector itself is also really diverse. You can find nonprofits that are focused on planning and almost set up like planning consultants. Those who are focused on policy advocacy and legislative engagement, others focused on community engagement and coalition building, and the list really goes on and on. What I really benefited from by working in the nonprofit sector is part of it is just reflective of the challenge of the nonprofit sector. It, similar to many local governments throughout California and throughout the country, staff capacity is a main challenge. So launching my career in the nonprofit sector, I was able to take on additional roles and really gain a lot of experience, really by virtue of not having enough staff to do all those things. I think there's a lot of room to take initiative and gain leadership skills. I think that's also true in other sectors as well, but at least from my experience, I found it to be very upfront and center and a lot of opportunities in the nonprofit world. Climate and energy and how that relates to urban design. I mean, it's absolutely essential, right? I live and breathe climate and energy. Most of my focus is around climate adaptation and resilience. So just recognizing the impacts that communities are already facing, which will only worsen over time, from extreme heat to sea level rise to drought to wildfire, and looking at planning practices, policies, and implementation on the ground that can really build the resilience of communities. So regardless of what aspect of urban design you're getting into, I think having a clear and focused lens around climate is important. So if you're looking at transportation, thinking about the potential risks that climate change poses around transportation infrastructure, as you're pursuing active transportation, keeping in mind other climate impacts like increasing temperatures and extreme heat, and ensuring that active transportation planning also includes elements of urban forestry, for example, to provide shading. In the housing realm, wildfires, we've been seeing quite a few throughout California, almost a year-long wildfire season now. A lot of focus around how we can avoid development in the wildland-urban interface, where the risk of wildfires is high, but then there's tension with the need to build affordable housing. I think in approaching all of these challenges and trying to address all of these needs, it's kind of getting back to some foundational principles of smart growth, like focusing on infill development, prioritizing alternative modes of transportation. Environmental justice, including racial justice, also needs to be, hopefully it is something that you're all focusing on as well. If we think about racial inequities, health inequities that many marginalized communities are facing, they often share the same root causes as climate change. It's really an imbalance in power and the systems that are at play. That's what really kind of excites me and motivates me to continue working in the climate space. Yes, there are these huge impacts that we're grappling with limited resources and limited staff capacity, but there's also real opportunity to transform these systems that clearly aren't working for us. Let's see, I'm gonna just open it back up to see if anyone has any reactions or reflections on anything I shared, counterpoints, anything to add, or any additional questions with the 2 minutes we have.
I guess I sort of have a question about budgets and grants. So you work for a nonprofit, and I'm guessing that you go after a lot of different grants. Can you talk about what types of grants you and your staff apply for?
Yes. Thankfully, in California, we have a pretty progressive leadership and policy landscape that has led to the creation of a number of grant programs. So we do apply for a number of state grants as well as RFPs, like the SB1 Transportation Adaptation Planning Grant. There were 3 cycles of that. We were able to get 3 projects funded through that source. We get funding through the Strategic Growth Council, But a lot of our funding also comes through direct partnerships and sponsorships. So we have programs that are sponsored by community choice aggregation programs and agencies, air districts, let's see, other, let me see, so definitely foundation funding and like philanthropy is another area. So I think the main, what we really strive for is a diversity in our funding plan. It helps us be more resilient. You know, we did have federal funding, but with the change in administration, we virtually lost all of our federal funding, but because our portfolio was funded through diverse sources, we were able to hold steady.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. How did the second session go? Was 10 minutes okay? Okay.
Better.
Thanks for your feedback. All right, so I will start assigning the next round. All right.
Or just let me know over here. What would you guys prefer?
I have a question. I believe when I saw your bio, you specialize in housing policy. I was wondering how you started working through policy. I'm not sure if you received your master's in policy or planning. So if you can touch a little bit upon that.
Yeah, so I have my master's in social work and policy. And so actually the way that I got my job was through somebody that I worked with. I didn't work with that person, but it was in the same office during my first year of grad school. And I was working for the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority for their homeless count. And it was just one of the supervisors that was around the area, and that I kind of, while I was working there, I kind of talked to him and just offered to, you know, send me anything that was coming up. And I was almost going to graduate, and I had been looking for job opportunities, like I think the summer before I was graduating. And I still hadn't found anything. And then like 2 months before I actually graduated, I reached out to him, and he sent me the, you know, just like different opportunities. And this job was one of them that he sent out. It's actually really interesting because I think I graduated in December 2019, which is like 3 months before the pandemic. So it was really, really lucky that you know, that I found this job right before, and that I moved around 2 weeks after getting hired.
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about your day-to-day work?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about a typical day at your work? Because you work in policy and we're more familiar with urban planning.
Oh, yeah, sure. So there isn't really a typical day. I mean, there's like typical like schedules for certain times and days. But right now we're like in session, so we have a lot of hearings and we have like different partners that we meet up with. But usually what I do is I'll look at my calendar, make sure we don't have any hearings going on for the week, check on meetings, reply back to emails, and then we'll have some kind of coalition, at least 2 or 3 a week. We'll have like coalition calls, and sometimes we'll have meetings with staff members and just talk about like what we're supporting or opposing, or why it, like suggested changes and things like that. Right now we have a few hearings coming up, so that's going to take up most of the week, is just working on that. But there kind of isn't there's a typical like a cycle within certain times, like when we're working on certain conferences or hearings, but not really a typical day. I try to squeeze in, some research time if I can, about 30 minutes. Sorry, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question. Working in policy, what is the most difficult, I guess, day-to-day task with your job? What kind of stands out as I don't want to say an eyesore, but as some type of a difficult task that you deal with?
I think sometimes dealing with or working with certain offices can be very difficult. It's more of the interactions with or the communications sometimes that are gonna get confused along the ways, that are kind of maybe the most difficult part. So I guess dealing with people and having to change certain bills, or having to make changes to different things that we want from programs or projects, that can be very difficult. Yeah, and I think that's probably the most difficult part of policy, is just really dealing with certain staff and certain offices. Because they could be, if you don't know what their main goal is, and some of the things that are, happening, like you have to know what the member or the staff members goal is in their district. And if you don't, sometimes you can, ask for things that are just not going to be possible. And so I think it's just working really with people that is the hardest part. Like the politics is what I mean.
Do you have any advice for someone like myself who's in planning but interested in getting involved in policy? I just recently interviewed for a policy associate position, and I don't think I got it because I am not I'm not trained in policy or policy memos writing and things like that. So I was wondering if you had any advice to get started.
Yeah, actually, so I didn't, before, grad school, I wasn't in policy either. I was working in like education. And then in grad school, I started off in social work. So nothing to do with policy at all. But I think from there, I had an interest in social policy. And so from there, I was able to kind of like, I think if you think about a way to connect your degree and your expertise to policy, I think that really helps out. I think, Erica, are you like a planning student?
Yeah, I am.
Urban planning? Mm-hmm. So like getting more involved in like land use policy would probably be like the easiest way for you to connect into that field. Looking at, like environmental justice, looking at there's certain organizations that focus on development, or they focus on like bills that are passed for like CEQA and different things like that. I think looking into different areas like that would be a good way to connect your expertise that you already have with, policy. Because I think things that like certain skills for policies you can learn, but I think it's like your specific expertise that you can bring in and like kind of make your own. And, like writing briefs and different things like that, that's something you can learn. But, you have a background in something that they're already interested in. So you just need to like kind of try and like maybe look for volunteer or internship opportunities in that area, because you could always learn the other stuff.
Thank you.
I have a question. Given your
Oh,
experience
sorry, I
working-
can't hear you. Renata.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll start over. Given your experience in housing policy throughout, I know that the organization is throughout California. Can you, like in an ideal world, if you had the ability to pass legislation, what is the most important kind of new policy or innovation in housing that you would want to see in California?
Well, speaking on my behalf, because I don't think like my organization, they would have like different ideas on what they would want to be passed. But I think looking into like a more flexible voucher for affordable housing, I think that would be a really great idea. I think rent subsidies would be a great idea. There's a lot of people, you know, that rent. But aside from that, I think increasing opportunities for home ownership. I think that's really important. You know, it's not, I think specifically if you focus it on certain communities that have had a difficult time, you know, because of just like systemic issues, really having opportunities to get housing, I think that would be ideal. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good question. I don't know what else to say. There's a lot. Yeah, and that's all I can think of right now from the top of my head. But yeah, really just focusing on I think home ownership, rent subsidies. I would say sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say more housing around like transit oriented spaces, but also there's like there's problems with that as well. So I don't know if I would want to get to that.
To kind of bounce off of Renata's question, my boss actually sent me a list of housing bills this morning to kind of keep my eye out for. I didn't have time to look at it today. I will tomorrow. But since you work in housing policy, is there a specific bill that is catching your eye that's currently maybe being discussed in the Assembly or the Senate that you think might be kind of impactful in planning, kind of like how the ADU bill was last year when it was implemented? What kind of like sweeping change should we be prepared for?
Well, this one has to do with more like criminal justice, but AB 1000.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So we have 2 more breakout rooms, and then we'll have a few more minutes after that for the Q&A session. Hey Carlene, just wanted to check in. How's it going?
It's going good. I've noticed that I can actually see if anyone enters the breakout room, so I just hopped into 1 or 2.
Okay, good.
And I think they're going well. And then hopefully we'll have questions for the group breakout, but I think it's going great.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be over an hour and a half. So I'll just say if people need to leave, they can leave early. And then for those who have time to stay, I guess I'll just message the panelists and ask them if they would be willing to stay for a few more minutes. And of course, those who need to leave can leave.
Yeah, I don't think you have to message. You can just ask them. And if they are able to say, they'll just say it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there were a few hiccups, but I think on the first one we learned right off the bat that 8 minutes.
Yeah, I think just a lot of people aren't checking their phones or checking the chat right now. So
yeah, okay. Well, I'm trying to give everyone updates like when they have 4 minutes remaining and then 2 minutes remaining, and then
I saw that and it was super helpful.
Okay, good. All right, I'll try to keep on track of that. Thanks so much for
no
help.
problem.
All right, I'm going to join the meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
Go.
Based organization to sort of identify the areas that they were interested in. And at the end of the project, we were able to give them some data that they were able to use for their policy initiatives. So that was something that kind of introduced me to planning. And, you know, we learned a lot about the history of why those communities were in those positions in the first place. And it was due to a lot of the redlining back in the 50s and 60s. So that's kind of how I got introduced into planning. And then going into my master's at UCI, I thought I was going to go into environmental planning because I had an environmental background. It kind of made sense. And then it, you know, I learned that it was a lot of CEQA and stuff that I just really wasn't interested in. And so I found that transportation was kind of a good way for me to get involved with some of the issues surrounding environmental justice that I was interested in. And so that's why now I do a lot of active transportation and multimodal connectivity, working with a lot of cities and a lot of transit agencies as well. So that's where I'm at now. And I've been at IBI for 6 years now. So I don't know if any of you have questions about transportation specifically or just general questions about planning. I can answer those. But yeah, that's a little bit more about my background.
I have a question. You mentioned that there are architects and planners in a bunch of different disciplines at your firm. And I'm wondering how, do you all take on projects together or, I mean, certain projects together where it's sort of a team effort, or is it really separated with the different disciplines? I'm kind of curious how they all interconnect.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I find really enjoyable is that I work with engineers a lot, actually. So for our transportation group, we're mostly engineers and planners. And our architects typically work a little bit, they have some more, because they're dealing more with buildings. They're part of our buildings group. We don't work with them all the time. There are some instances where we did a master plan for the LA Civic Center. And so they had kind of some of the architecture part, and then they brought in our transportation group to kind of focus on the circulation and kind of the mobility around the Civic Center. So that's kind of an example of a project where we would be collaborating. When it comes to a lot of like my active transportation projects, we have the planners who are doing a lot of the research and putting together recommendations and things like that and doing the community engagement. And then we'll pull in the engineers to then do cost estimates on some of the active transportation improvements that we're proposing. So we might propose a bikeway, or we might propose certain things where we would have the engineers come in and do cost estimates on what that would look like and do some designing as well.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So currently I work at a municipality, and I primarily focus on current planning. Since a lot of transportation is often involved with the public right of way, it's mostly handed off to our public works department. What do you think? What kind of career advice do you have for someone that might want to kind of diverge into that sector of planning later in the future?
And you saying like into, I guess, into public, like working with public works at the city?
Yes.
Okay. I think that there's definitely a lot of overlap. I would say I can give an example of like a project that we did with actually City of Irvine. We did a trails project where we were kind of giving some recommendations for closing some gaps within trails in Irvine. And we ran into a lot of right-of-way situations there where a lot of that is owned by like the NSNF. There's a lot of rail in that area where we don't have the right-of-way. So I would say just to kind of keep getting your feet wet in kind of that arena, kind of keep getting different experiences within transportation. And I think that there's a lot of crossover with public works. And I think that the more that you kind of get experience in those different areas, it kind of makes you a stronger candidate. What I found when I was applying for internships even was before I did that, I kind of was all over the place with my undergrad. I was environmental science major, but I kind of was just all over the place, and I felt like I didn't have like a specific direction that I wanted to go in. But when I did one of my interviews, some of the feedback that I got was that because I had experience in so many different areas, it made me a stronger candidate. So I would definitely say kind of like play that up. And even if you're interested in a certain position, you don't think that you have all of the technical skills, don't sell yourself short, like just go for something like that, because that's how you're going to get the experience. I hope that helps. I don't know if I answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. Since you are in environmental, policy and planning, I'm just interested. Like, I read a lot in the news that like there's conflict between like housing, increasing housing, and also while still maintaining like conservation of certain species and habitats and all that, like environmental restrictions. So from your experience and perspective, what do you have to say? And as in like how to manage both parts for the best outcomes?
Yeah, I think that that's something that is kind of emerged in planning a little bit more in recent years, is kind of paying attention to that. And I think that what's important is that a lot of these projects are written from a point where it's included in the scope to have those considerations. I can't speak too much to, I guess, housing and kind of protecting like certain species because I don't have too much experience in it. But I could say at least that it would be, the only similarity that I can draw there is that when we do transportation projects, a lot of time we have to think about housing actually and kind of displacing people, and if there is potential for gentrification and things like that. And what I've seen in a lot of the projects that have been coming on the past few years is kind of including in that scope a complete and like actually thorough analysis, not just kind of like a checkbox that, oh yeah, we considered displacement or we considered this or that. It's actually making sure that the analysis is comprehensive and that it's built in a way that all of that is actually getting incorporated into how recommendations are being made, because sometimes it can just be kind of like, oh yeah, the analysis is there, but it isn't shown in the recommendations. So I think that that's something that can be influenced by the people that are writing up project scopes, whether that's a city or anything like that. And then also consultants in the private sector can have an effect on how they do that task as a part of the project. So I think that that's something that's really important. I do think it's something that's come up a little bit more often, which is good to see. But it's definitely kind of a labor of love. You kind of have to make sure that you pay that attention to that part of the project.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, everyone. So this is our fifth and last round of the breakout rooms.
you? Laura, what's up?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
All right, finally above the water after drowning over COVID.
Yeah, I know. I heard you changed places. It sounds like it's a good place that you like Placeworks.
Yeah, it's good. I have to say that because Renata's here now.
Glad you know each other.
I went to her office 2 offices ago. So what that was in Newport, right? Was that in Newport?
Yeah, it's here, G-Land. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the place. Never going back. So Laura, you can text me if you ever have questions that I don't get to, because you know me. But you can ask questions, Roll. But anyone? Hello? Oh, bye, Layla. I can't. Okay, so questions before Renata just closes the chat on us mid-sentence.
I have a question. Rumor has it that you worked for Disney in planning. Can you kind of go over that? Just because it sounds like a really interesting topic, and
Sure.
I also know that Erica has the same question, and we've been talking about it nonstop all day. So,
Okay. Well, Renata, turn off the volume. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Disney was super cool. I worked in facilities asset management. The name's not fun, but basically we worked for whenever Imagineering or anyone had like new updates to the park or new extensions or renovations and stuff like that. We were the people who did all the project management for that. It's pretty cool. I have like 2 hard hats from that position that has like a Mickey Mouse on it. I did get to go into the park whenever I wanted. I had a churro like every day. All the glamour stuff is cool, free tickets. But I would say the cool thing about Disney in comparison to like any job I've been in, they do such a good job to make sure that no one notices that they're under construction. They're the most efficient office I've ever been in. Renata, don't quote me, the Placeworks, but Disney, like, they're super efficient with getting things done and getting things done on time. And that's something I really appreciated. And another thing was the fact that like, it was the most diverse office I've ever been in. So it was a lot of construction, a lot of facilities planning, a lot of like, you get intertwined with so many different departments because you have to work with so many different departments in order to get a project done. Because you might be, you know, renovating a hotel or whatever. Okay, you have to talk to a head of housekeeping, you have to talk to operations and all this other stuff. But there were so many like Black and brown people, queer people, trans, like it was such a like so diverse, you know. I saw women in like high places of power who would like literally say, no, you're not doing that, and everyone would just stop, you know. Like I haven't seen that type of power in any office I've been in. But that's something that I really value there. And they're a place I really want everyone to constantly be growing and like learning new things and stuff. That was really cool. Disney really is a cult. It's such a, like, it's totally a cult. Like they make you spend one day learning about nothing but Disney. And you just hang out with all these newbies who are like learning about Disney too. And they basically sprinkle you with like fairy dust and stuff and get you all high off Disney. And like you get super excited because there's a lot of possibilities to move around. Once you get your foot in the door, there's so many places you can move around. And what sucks is that before COVID, I was actually interviewing with master planning with Imagineering at Disney, and I was interviewing with them during my program, and then COVID hit, and then they said, nah, like we ain't hiring no more, we done with you. I see a question. Oh, okay, never mind. But yeah, that's Disney. Does anyone have any technical questions? I can talk about Disney all day.
Yeah, I do. Do you mind if we switch from Disney now, or Kristen, do you
Yeah,
still want to
go
ask?
ahead, girl.
Okay.
You guys can ask later if you have more questions about it.
Yeah, Alexandra, I hope I said that right. I'm really interested in urban design and how it relates to sustainability. And I'm curious, since you are a MERP alumnus as well, if you could talk a little bit about how you entered that field.
Yes. Okay. So for design, I would say I personally got lucky because when I met the owner of TRG Land, Mark Rogers, who's also very much, Randy and Mark Rogers not get along. They're rivals in the planning field, but Mark Rogers took me under his wing and I basically became his apprentice while I was there. He taught me everything I know about grading, design, landscape design. But at the same time while I was there, what I did for myself, I took landscape architecture courses at OCC, and I took a couple architecture courses as well. When it comes to learning how to grade and all that stuff, like the technical stuff of design, I learned that in the office, but I also taught myself that I actually have like quite a few books. If you ever want to borrow them, you can. And that's another thing, Renata, you're in a good place. Like if you're interested in design, just reach out to Scott, or I could say something too and say like, hey, like the intern wants to learn about how to do this stuff. Like there's opportunities to do that once you get into an office like PlaceWorks or a place that offers all those things. Now, if you're just trying to get your foot in the door with design, it's difficult when you're a MERP student or urban studies student because they tend to like architects. They like to think that landscape architects and architects are the best ones for design. Yeah, okay, girl, we get it. But like, they like to see a portfolio. That's how like a lot of places like to hire for designers. And you're gonna see that at like Michael Baker. You're gonna be like, oh, like I took a urban design class at MERP and stuff like that. But then like you scroll down and you see that they want an architect degree. So my best bet with that is just like take on the courses yourself, teach yourself that stuff, and like build a portfolio, or you get into a company that does offer design and then try and make a lateral movement into that. Like you get opportunities to say like, hey, that's a cool project. Can I follow along? I'll do the planning for you. And then like you start segueing yourself into like, hey, so how do you grade that? Like, what are you doing right there? So, but once you get your foot in the door and you're in an office, there's opportunity to learn if you want to. But right now, like, I know it's totally difficult and it's hard to do that with MERP because I know they dropped the design part of the program. But if you're in an organization, express wanting to learn. If you have time to learn, there's Landscape Design for Engineers. That's a book that I learned from. And then I have some materials if you guys ever want it. So like, Renata, feel free to send my email out to everyone after this. But design, it takes a lot of like self-learning if you didn't actually get like active architecture courses and stuff. And then we got 60 seconds. So who's got one more question or something?
I have a quick one. Just understanding, like, as an architect and a planner, which now I see myself as both, like in a firm type setting, do you get kind of pigeonholed into one or the other, a firm that offers architecture and planning, or are there opportunities to do both?
There are opportunities to do both depending on what firm you go to. I know with places like PlaceWorks, and when I was at TRG Land, they use you for what they need help with at the time. So if they only have one person that tends to do the design for them, they're gonna look at the other person that has an architecture background and be like, hey, you wanna start doing this? Because they're gonna want you to fill in that person's shoes. And that's what tends to happen right now, because a lot of the people who are known for design are super like 80s and 90s, and they're retiring. So now they're looking for like younger people. So
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the main session. Thanks for sticking with it and going through all the breakout rooms. I had a lot of fun and I hope you did too. We are running a little bit over schedule, so I just wanted to let everyone know that if you have to leave, feel free to do so. Thank you so much for joining. And the same goes for the panelists too, but for those who want to stay, we're gonna continue for a few more minutes if you don't mind. And we're gonna do the second raffle now.
Yay, more money. Let's do this. Okay, Erica and Eddie, I know you guys hopped in a little late, so I just assigned you guys numbers really quick. I think Erica, you'll be 33, Eddie, you'll be 34. And I know people have, oh, and Andres, okay, 35. Hold on, let me add 35 on the wheel spin. And I know there's people who, you know, had to hop off, and if it just happens to land on a number, that's someone that's on here will just do it again. So, okay, Andres is 35. Okay, cool. All right, let me share my screen and good luck to everyone. You all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So just so you all see, last number is 35. We have 35 numbers in the draw, and here we go. Ooh, 31. Is Maggie still on the car? Because that's why I have asked the 30 for 31. No?
I think it says Keenan in the chat, 31.
Does it?
Yeah.
Keenan still here? No? Well, then I guess we have to spin it again.
Or you just give it to 23. No.
Oh, let's hope it hits 23. Oh, that was close too. So 26 on my little list. Fernando, is Fernando still on the car? Damn, y'all are getting lucky. People are hopping off. All right, let's go again. That was Renata. She's number one. Hey, you want to know? It's the wheel. It's not. It's no one's fault. It's no one's fault.
This is so rigged.
Hey, blame the wheel. Blame the wheel.
Renata, if I see in the office on site, I'm stealing it. I'm kidding.
Renata's buying lunch.
We have
really
one more.
Excited.
So, let's just hope it's nobody on the board because this does look fishy. Wow. That was Christian. Christian, you're number 5, right?
I'm 3.
No, you're not.
I can't be 5.
I don't think you gave a 5. It kind of skipped.
Okay.
I think it's Christina.
Is it me?
Well, is Christina number 3 and Christian's number 5, right? I think it is Christian.
Yay, I guess.
You know what? This was not how it's supposed to turn out, but it's because it was randomized. Y'all saw that.
Erica, I'll buy you lunch, okay, Erica?
Deal.
Congratulations to our winners. I don't really have to ask for emails because, I mean, it's everyone we know. So congratulations to everyone.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Ricardo, for managing the raffle. So for those of you who want to stick around, maybe we could do like 5 minutes of Q&A. How do people feel? Are people ready to call it a night?
I'm cool with hanging back a little bit if people have questions.
Did everyone get their questions answered already in the breakout rooms? Are we still curious?
If anyone has any questions, go ahead and just like unmute and then you can ask your questions. I know the breakout rooms were kind of short.
Hi, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it could be for any of the panelists or all the panelists. I was just wondering, did you happen to use any of the academic knowledge you learned during your like master's program? And if so, do you have any recommendations such as specific programs like using AutoCAD, things like that?
Yeah, great question, Jeannie. Does anyone want to take that on?
I could jump in. Well, one, if you're trying to step into the field, it's really good to have strong technical skills to get noticed. So if you're trying to get into planning and design in the private sector, it's good to have Adobe Suite under your belt, CAD, GIS, knowing how to use the different like drives. So Dropbox, Google Drive, those things are super important because now that cities have gone very much virtual when it comes to submittals, they tend to use those platforms to, get big documents and work on projects with clients and stuff. When it comes to my education and how much I use in the field, I could probably say a couple of classes in my undergrad in urban studies where, I learned about what a specific plan was, what's a general plan, and those things were important when I was trying to get an internship. But I also took like engineering courses in CAD and GIS and stuff. So those are really important things to have. That's what I could say about like my field. There is also someone mentioned in another group that asked me about CEQA. There is a UCSD CEQA certification program that I think is pretty good, especially if you're trying to be a planner, whether like in environmental planning, government, or private. That's a really good program to try out if you want to get a certification. CEQA is always changing, and it's very difficult to navigate if you don't know it, and you're always going to encounter it. So that's something pretty cool to do. And if you want to do design, and MERP doesn't have architecture or like actual design, hands-on design, OCC offers architecture courses and landscape architecture courses that are very affordable, and I've taken up myself. And people who teach those courses are people who are actively architects now. One of the landscape architects there, Lori, she used to work for Disney. So she was really fun to work with for my landscape architecture courses and stuff and learn from. So yeah, those are a few things that you should probably try doing on your own.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more. And I could bring up a question from the spreadsheet if no one wants to ask one. Okay, I'll bring up this one. How do you implement sustainability in your career? And that one is not for any specific panelists, so whoever wants to take that one may do so.
I can jump in, Renata, if you want. I mean, it's a little bit of a weird question for me in terms of the work that I do, because my work really is about how do you make programs and on the ground efforts more sustainable, particularly by looking at it from a climate perspective and putting that climate lens. So that's really where I feel like my career has gone, is really looking at climate change and what role climate change plays in the sustainability of a community, an urban area, of landscape, etc. So it's really sort of an integral part. But I think an important piece is also recognizing it's not just climate, and climate shouldn't be considered in isolation. And there's a lot of other issues that a community may face that needs to be taken into consideration when you think about sustainability. So I'll stop there.
I can say in active transportation planning, I think that one way that you incorporate sustainability is making sure that you're thinking about not only, I guess, the recommendations that you're going to make for a certain project, but kind of the impact that those projects are going to have. And part of, I guess, a part of being able to do that is making sure that you have that part of that project, making sure that you're considering those impacts in your analysis, and also making sure that you have like a robust community engagement where you're actually talking with the people who those projects are going to be affecting, because that you want to make sure that you incorporate the feedback and the input that you get directly into the project and into the recommendations to make sure that this is something that's going to live on and be those recommendations that you're making to make that area more sustainable is going to stay sustainable. That's a really big part of it, I would say.
What I would probably add to that, from a design standpoint, as a designer, you're always wondering, how is the built environment going to communicate with the natural environment? And a lot of the projects I worked on are in hillside planning. So projects that, you encounter things like burrowing owls and gnatcatchers in the area, and they have to be preserved and you have to design around and stuff. So as a designer, you always try to think of what the client wants first, but at the same time, you always have to think about what is my project going to impact? Am I impacting views? Am I destroying this many trees? How many can I save? So even though we're trying to make a client happy, we're trying to make the city happy, we're trying to make BLM happy, and all these different entities, you can actually make design choices of, okay, if I can just, decrease the amount of grading here and save about 20% more of this landfill or like this land area and preserve more trees, preserve more animals and all those things like that. Of course, there's all these other studies that go along with it too, before you even can design. But those are things that you actively think about, like what can I preserve? The goal of a designer is to make the least amount of impact that you can in the natural environment, especially when you're working in hillside. But that's most of what I can say that I can do with sustainability.
Thank you.
Add to that, I interpreted the question in two different ways. First, like, how do I do my work sustainably? In addition to like the different decisions that need to be made from a planning or policy standpoint, there are a lot of like smaller decisions that I make certainly in like my day-to-day and how I run projects. So, working with local vendors rather than like larger corporations, thinking about like where do we site workshops where it can be close to transit or where it's accessible through active transportation modes. What kind of supplies are we purchasing, and is that needed? We try to kind of live and breathe and be models for sustainability and all of the decisions, like small or big, that we make. And then the other way to interpret it is kind of building upon, Christina, your point, like how do we ensure that the work that we do can be sustained? So a lot of our focus is around capacity building. So, we certainly don't want to create a plan that just sits on a shelf. I think a big part of that is actually socializing the plan itself with other city staff, with other partners, providing trainings to build capacity for those staff to actually be able to move the actions or goals included in the plan forward. And when I say plan, like most of the plans that I'm engaging with are climate action plans, climate adaptation plans, and then also thinking about community engagement. Rather than pursuing one-off opportunities to conduct a public workshop here and there, how do you sustain ongoing community engagement and involvement? If you haven't looked at the spectrum of community engagement to ownership, I definitely recommend taking a look at that. So how can, like through your project, your planning work, how can you tap into existing trusted community partners to reach the residents that you want to? How can we use this planning project as an opportunity to actually build that community capacity and sustain their ongoing engagement by establishing, standing councils or committees or networks? Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Hi.
Go ahead, Eddie, if you have a question.
Yeah, so sustainability, that's a term that I've been learning about since undergrad. And undergrad was about 3 years ago for me. But recently, so right now I'm taking a class called Transportation and Environmental Health with Dr. Houston, and we learned like there's like a trio when it comes to sustainability. There's equity, there's economic, and there's ecological or environmental. As far as like planning, all three of the trios have to like meet the project has to like meet all three like the trios, like equity, economic, and environmental. And I'm just like kind of curious if like the panelists so like been in like that situation, like what you guys have done to like make a project sustainable, and like which conflict were you in with economic or environmental or equity? Hopefully like that's like not too big of a question.
I could try. So do you mean just in like transportation specifically, or?
Sure. I mean, hopefully it's not like too biased of me to say that, because like that's what I eventually like want to go into, is transportation.
I see. I can't speak to transportation exactly to the T, but I could probably say one of the bottlenecks for transportation in the projects that I've worked on is whenever we have to cross over a channel that's actually like Bureau of Land Management and it's owned by them, or Bureau of Reclamation. If you ever have to deal with either of those entities, you're looking at 10 years until your project can be approved to even cross a channel or anything like that. So it's definitely a sustainability thing, an environmental thing, and everything, but like it's probably the most costly thing it's done to a project. Before I left my last job, Terra G Land, we had that issue with a project in La Quinta, and the planner on the project from BLM told us that it would take 9 years before they could get to our project and start review, because they have that many projects that they were reviewing in the state alone. So that's when it could be not, economically great for a project, depending on what entities you work with. But most of the time when it becomes a costly project because of the time it takes for anything. The longer the clock runs, the more your project's going to cost. And I'm sure the other ladies know more than I do about transportation, so.
Thank you.
I guess I can try to add to that for transportation projects, at least with active transportation. I mean, part of it is environmentally, or inherently environmentally sustainable. When we're working on trying to encourage people to use alternative modes of transportation. One example I can give is our OC Active. So we did a countywide active transportation plan for Orange County. It's the first time that they have a comprehensive plan for the entire 35 jurisdictions in Orange County. And it's environmentally sustainable in the fact that, you know, we're trying to make the pedestrian and bicycle network more comprehensive and more complete so that people can use that, don't have to rely on vehicles and emitting GHGs and things like that. As far as the economics, I would say part of it was trying to make sure that the recommendations that we were giving were taking into account individual, like socioeconomics. So certain areas might need to be prioritized a little bit more, and that kind of spills over into equity. I think that we had to pay attention to identifying certain communities that were more vulnerable populations, more areas that had exposure to environmental burdens and things like that. So identifying those areas, and then also making sure that through our community outreach process, we were making sure that we were talking to the community and also stakeholders. So we talked to people, of course, through our I guess our advisory groups. We had advisory groups that were made up of different staff members from all the different jurisdictions. But then we were also talking to community groups. We were talking to business owners. So in that way, you're kind of looking at how all of this can impact different areas and different populations in the community. So I'd say that that's kind of how we approached the economic part of that, and then also the equity. I think that there's a lot of overlap in those two when it comes to transportation. And then also taking a look at displacement risk. So that's kind of something that's really important in transportation as well, is making sure that what we're going to be inputting or we're going to be, I guess, recommending isn't going to negatively affect housing or certain communities. And then at the same time, also making sure that we were giving, along with our recommendations, some funding opportunities. So that's a big part of transportation projects as well, as making sure that you have a list of potential funding opportunities, so that if the cities look at this plan and they decide, you know, we want to implement these projects that are being recommended, that there are actually opportunities to fund them. So there's a list of grants and kind of requirements that they need to be able to apply for those grants and to actually be successful in getting them. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you all the panelists who answered that question. Thanks, Eddie. It was a very good question. So I think it's almost 8 o'clock. I don't know. It looks like Lucero has one question to ask. Is it okay if we do one final question? Okay, so go ahead, Lucero.
Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you for your time. I did have a question. Given that, you know, I'm a second year and I will be graduating within, you know, the next few months, I can already foresee myself having many questions depending on whichever job I land. Because, you know, I'm recently, I would at that time be a recent graduate. And then also I would be new to the field. So what would be the best way to address any questions regarding, you know, the workplace that I will be in, and not overwhelm, you know, like a supervisor or whoever is overseeing my work?
Is your question like what kind of questions you can ask in an interview to get a better understanding of the workplace environment? Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, the question is, given that, you know, I would be new, and whichever workplace I end up working in, I could already see myself having a lot of questions when, you know, I'm hired, because I'm going to be new to the position. So how do I go about addressing questions, you know, in the workplace without overwhelming like a supervisor? Because again, given that this will be a new profession.
Oh, as in like you don't want to burden your supervisor with constantly asking questions you don't know. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. And, you know, I just started a new job a couple of months ago, so I totally feel your pain, and can understand and sympathize with that question. And, you know, one of the things that I try to do is, one, you cannot be afraid to ask questions. Your supervisor knows you're new, and your supervisor knows that you have a set of expertise, you got that degree, but that doesn't mean you know the culture. That doesn't mean you know the nuances of where the billing happens and where Sue sits and where, you know, you find the information on the Google Doc to fill out this form. It's okay to actually have questions, and don't feel like you're questioning your degree or your area of expertise or your knowledge because you don't know something that you couldn't possibly know because you didn't learn it in school. It's just the fact that you don't work there, and so you don't know where to find document X to make Y happen, right? So one, I would say, don't be afraid to ask those questions, and just remember that you are in a new space and your supervisor knows that you're new. And then I think the second point is, any instance that you can, to either find someone on your team that you feel comfortable asking those questions, who may not be your supervisor and who may be able to willing to hold your hand, or for you to at least explore things before you then turn to your supervisor and then say, hey, look, I tried to do it on my own. Here's what I found out. Am I on the right track? So I would just say, you know, one, don't beat yourself up. You're new. Your supervisor knows you're new, and it's okay to ask those questions. And then any instance you have where you can kind of try to figure it out on your own, but then loop back around with your supervisor and say, okay, here's what I found out. Am I on the right track?
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I'll add to that and say, like, asking your supervisor what their like communication preferences are could also be really helpful. And yeah, echoing what Adrian said, like, don't be afraid to ask questions. I supervise many people. I've supervised many people. Like, I'd rather have someone reach out to me with a question and feel like they're kind of spinning their wheels on their own. Because ultimately, if you are spinning your wheels on your own or worried about asking a question, then that's actually going to be more expensive for the organization or the company in terms of time spent. But checking in on what their communication preferences are could be helpful. So, you know, would they rather have you kind of chat them as questions come up, or would they rather have you kind of keep a log of those questions so that you can check in one-on-one during, you know, your scheduled meeting? As Adrian noted, like, you don't have to just lean on your supervisor. You'll probably be working in a team with other teammates, peers, and I'm sure they'll be able to help answer any questions that you have. I also want to super quickly respond to what Eddie brought up around the triple bottom line, if I can, because I think that's so important. And I wanted to just flag a couple of examples. So thinking about active transportation, let's say you want to, you know, like, really, like, I don't know, like, improve active transportation pathways. That can be a local economic driver. There are studies that show that foot traffic increases local economic activity. You know, active transportation in and of itself is more sustainable, but how can you take that to the next level? How integrate great infrastructure and, you know, tree planting, like, along that pathway, because that's also going to boost economic activity. In terms of equity, thinking about, like, where do you actually prioritize that kind of investment and improvement? Where are the most under-resourced or tree deficient communities or areas that could use some support in terms of the local economy? And again, like, I think, Christina, you mentioned this, just ensuring that you're matching that with anti-displacement measures. And then another quick example is, let's say you want to put a mobility hub in place that includes, like, a transit station and, you know, like, scooters, like, you know, like the electric scooters, electric bikes, and bike racks, and all those things. How could that actually create jobs? That itself could be a local economic driver. Are there ways in which, you know, there will be space for new companies to come in? That could also be a local economic driver. And again, just on the equity side, like, just ensuring that it's, you're keeping in mind anti-displacement measures, citing it in an appropriate area somewhere where the community itself can really benefit from a mobility hub, and ensuring that you're getting their input every step of the way. super quick on like the environmental side, like making sure that you're citing it somewhere where it's not, you know, super risky in terms of various climate impacts or in a flood zone. So anyway, I think that was just such a great question and something that I think is important for planners to keep in mind. So just wanted to quickly roundabout answer that, but I'll stop to see if anyone else wants to respond to the other question on supervisors.
Just to add, also Julia, that was a really good answer. For the question about like when to not ask too many questions, and this is a trick that I've learned myself, if I know they gave me an answer that I did not understand and I'm gonna ask more than twice, make sure that they see you write it down, because every question regarding that topic is gonna seem like a follow-up question instead, rather than you just not listening. Because if you ask the same question like more than 2 or 3 times, they're gonna think you're not listening, and that's when they're gonna start judging you. Like at the end of the day, we're all human. But your supervisor will get irritated if they have to show you something multiple times and they don't see you actively trying to do it yourself. That's from my experience and having too many people yell at me. So, but yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to give a round of applause virtually to all the panelists. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for staying so late on a weeknight. We learned so much and we really appreciate your expertise and your perspective and your inspiration to all of us. So thank you and have a great night. I'll follow up with you regarding the gift cards.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.